He was a man who had it all, a loving, pregnant wife and a rising career. But he was willing to risk it all for a taste of glamour with his mistress. He smuggled her into the city's most exclusive charity gala, a night reserved for the absolute elite. He thought his wife, Eleanor, was at home, naive and unaware, planning their nursery. He was wrong. As he stood there, his arm around the other woman, the spotlights flared. He froze in horror as the host was announced. It wasn't just a host, it was his pregnant wife, and she owned the entire event. Arthur Vance believed he was a man perpetually on the verge of his real life starting. At 34, he was a senior portfolio manager at a mid-level financial firm in Chicago, Henderson and Locke. He had the right title, but not the right office. He had the right car, but it was leased. He had the right watch, a gleaming Breitling, but it was a convincing replica he'd bought in a back-alley shop in Hong Kong on a business trip. He was a man built of facades, and he was getting tired of holding them up. His job was a daily humiliation. He watched younger men, like Daniel Peterson, a slick-talking Ivy Leaguer, get handed the whale accounts while he was stuck managing the legacy clients, retirees who wanted to chat about their grandchildren and their 2% returns. Vance, you've got a great touch with the over-70 crowd. His boss, James Henderson, had boomed at him last week, a backhanded compliment that felt like a slap. They trust you. Arthur didn't want to be trusted. He wanted to be feared. He wanted to be the man who strode into a boardroom and made a single cryptic statement that shifted markets. Instead, he was the man who patiently explained what a municipal bond was for the 4th time. His wife, Eleanor Hayes, should have been his solace. Instead, she was, in his mind, the very emblem of his stagnant, safe life. They had met 3 years prior at a quiet fundraiser for the city library. Eleanor had been a volunteer, her beauty understated, her hair pulled back in a simple bun, her clothes tasteful but unremarkable. She seemed to Arthur like the perfect foundation for a successful man. She was supportive, intelligent in a bookish, non-threatening way, and possessed a quiet grace that he mistook for simplicity. When she'd told him she'd dabbled in non-profit work from a modest family inheritance, he'd pictured her organizing bake sales, not balancing multi-million-dollar ledgers. He assumed inheritance meant a paid-off suburban house, not a dynasty. Now Eleanor was 7 months pregnant with their first child, a son. The pregnancy had, in Arthur's mind, rendered her even more domestic. She was slightly swollen, often tired, and seemed perfectly, bafflingly content to discuss paint swatches for the nursery. "Arthur, do you think Robin's Egg Blue is too predictable?" she'd asked just last night, holding up 2 nearly identical paint chips. "Or should we go with Morning Sky?" "They're the same, Elle. Just pick one," he'd snapped, not looking up from his phone. "I'm trying to follow the Asian markets." He wasn't. He was texting Chloe. Chloe Jenkins was the antidote to his suffocating, predictable life. She was a junior associate from the marketing department, all sharp angles, cynical laughter, and tight, expensive fabrics that broadcasted her intentions. She was a weapon, and she saw Arthur as her way into the executive suite. Their affair had started 6 months ago, a predictable cliché of stolen glances over spreadsheets and desperate, fumbling kisses in the firm's parking garage. Lately, Chloe had become demanding. "If you're serious about us, Arthur," she'd purred a few nights ago, tracing the lapel of his suit at a dim, overpriced cocktail bar. "You have to show me. I'm not a secret. I'm not some Robin's Egg Blue little wife." Arthur had flinched at the accidental accuracy of her comment. "I know, baby, I know. It's just complicated. The pregnancy. The pregnancy is the perfect cover," she'd countered, her eyes hard. She's tired. She's distracted. We should be out. We should be seen. That Starlight Gala is on Friday. Everyone who is anyone will be there. The Starlight Foundation Charity Ball. It was the single most exclusive event of the Chicago social calendar. Getting a ticket was impossible. It wasn't about money. It was about invitation. The guest list was a secret, comprised only of old money families, tech billionaires, and philanthropic giants. It was held annually at the Criterion Grand Ballroom, a place of legendary opulence. "Chloe, that's impossible," Arthur had laughed. "You don't just go to the Starlight Gala. You have to be anointed." "Daniel Peterson is going," she'd said, sipping her martini. "He was bragging about it today. Henderson got him a ticket. Why not you?" That lit a fire of pure acid in Arthur's gut. Peterson. Of course. He did?" Arthur stammered. "Yep," said Henderson is on one of the committees. A plan, foolish and magnificent in its audacity, began to form in Arthur's mind. He wouldn't ask Henderson. He would just go. He would walk in, name his boss, and imply he was meant to be there. It was the kind of bold, high-stakes move he'd read about in business biographies. Fortune favors the bold. "You know what?" he'd said to Chloe, grabbing her hand. "You're right. My boss, Henderson, is on the committee. He secured me a +1. He just hasn't given me the physical invite. It's all digital. It's us, baby. Our debut." Chloe's eyes had lit up. This was it. That evening, Arthur came home to find Eleanor addressing thick, cream-colored envelopes at their dining room table. The scent of rosemary chicken wafted from the kitchen. "How was your day, darling?" she asked, not looking up. Her hand, slightly swollen, moved with steady, elegant precision. "Busy. Incredibly busy," he grunted, loosening his tie. "Listen, honey, that big corporate retreat I mentioned, the one for the high performers, it's been moved. It's this Friday night, mandatory attendance. It's at that big ballroom downtown, the Criterion." Eleanor paused. She looked up, her blue eyes clear and searching. "This Friday? The 14th? Yeah, I know. Terrible timing with the baby prep. I'll be home late, so don't wait up." "The Criterion," she repeated, setting her pen down. "That's a very large venue for a corporate retreat, Arthur." A prickle of irritation. "Well, it's the whole Midwest division, Eleanor. They're flying people in. Look, you don't need to worry your head about it. It's just boring speeches and bad wine." He kissed the top of her head, his mind already on the emerald green dress Chloe planned to wear. "Of course," Eleanor said, her voice soft as silk. "I'm sure it's very important. I trust you." "I trust you." The words barely registered. He retreated to his study to work, but in reality, he was texting Chloe. "Arthur, it's done. Friday night, you and me. Wear something that will make them all stare." "Chloe, you better not be lying to me, Artie. I'm buying the shoes tomorrow." "Arthur, when have I ever let you down?" He leaned back in his chair, a smug smile on his face. He felt like a king, flawlessly managing his two separate worlds. He had no idea that his polite, pregnant wife, sitting just one room away, was not just invited to the gala he was sneaking into. She was the one who had sent the invitations. The logo embossed in the corner of the heavy cardstock she was addressing was a single, elegant constellation. The logo of the Starlight Foundation. The week leading up to the gala was a masterclass in Arthur's deceit. He partitioned his life with the precision of a surgeon, a high-wire act he found intoxicating. His days were spent flattering Chloe. On Wednesday, he took her to an exclusive boutique on Oak Street, a place where the price tags were hidden and the air smelled of imported perfume. "Just put it on the company card," He'd lied to the sales associate, sliding his personal platinum card, the one linked to the joint account he shared with Eleanor, across the marble counter. The dress was a sliver of emerald silk, slit high on the thigh, with a neckline that plunged dangerously. "Is it too much?" Chloe had asked, preening in the three-way mirror. "It's perfect," Arthur had said, his voice thick. "You look like you belong." The total came to $4,800. Arthur's blood ran cold for a second, but the thrill of the gesture, the way Chloe was looking at him, quickly overrode the panic. "Eleanor never checks the statements," he reasoned. "She trusts me to handle the finances." He pictured her at home, sorting through coupons, and felt a bizarre mix of guilt and contempt. His evenings were a different performance. He would come home to Eleanor, rubbing his temples and complaining about market volatility. "You seem so stressed, Arthur," Eleanor said 2 nights before the gala, placing a cup of herbal tea on his desk. She was sitting on the floor of the study, surrounded by instruction manuals for a baby stroller. "You have no idea, Elle. This retreat, Henderson is making it sound like our entire year's bonuses depend on networking at this thing. It's all just pressure. I have to schmooze with VPs I don't even know." "Well," she said, looking up from the manual, "just be yourself. You're the smartest man in the room. They'll see that." He melted, just a little, under her genuine, uncomplicated faith. A flash of guilt shot through him, hot and sharp. Here was this good, kind woman carrying his child, and he was lying to her face. He quickly suppressed it. "This is what it takes," he told himself. "Eleanor doesn't understand the drive, the ambition. She's happy in this small world. I'm built for something bigger. This is for us, in the long run, a better life." "Thanks, honey," he said, patting her hand. "You're a saint. I'll make it up to you, I promise. After this weekend, we'll focus on the baby. Just us." "I'd like that," she said. "Oh, by the way, I have my own little event on Friday night, too. My non-profit group is having its annual appreciation dinner. Nothing fancy, just at a hotel downtown." Arthur barely heard her. "That's great, Elle. Sounds nice." "It is. It's at the Criterion, actually. Isn't that a funny coincidence?" Arthur's blood froze. His heart hammered against his ribs. "What? What did you say?" Eleanor smiled, a placid, untroubled expression. "Yes. We're in one of the smaller banquet halls, I think. The Lakeview Room or something. It's just a small dinner for the core volunteers. You'll be in the main ballroom, I assume?" He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Of course. A massive venue like the Criterion would host multiple events. His Midwest Division retreat and her non-profit appreciation dinner. It was a close call, but the lie held. It was perfect in a way. "Exactly," he said, forcing a chuckle. "The main ballroom. We'll probably be in the same building and won't even see each other." "Funny." "Hilarious," she agreed. "Well, I need to go over my speech." "You're giving a speech?" he asked, distracted, already checking his phone for a text from Chloe. "Just a few words of thanks to the volunteers. Nothing important." She smiled, kissed his cheek, and walked out of the study, her hand resting on her stomach. Arthur didn't see her stop in the hallway. He didn't see her close her eyes, take a deep, steadying breath, and look at the reflection of his study door in the hallway mirror. Her expression was not one of gentle naivete. It was one of cold, profound resolution. On Friday, Eleanor's preparation was a world away from Chloe's. There was no frantic shopping. At noon, her assistant, a sharp, efficient man in a bespoke suit named Elias Thorne, arrived at their apartment. Arthur, who was working from home to leave early for Chloe, saw him and scoffed. He'd always seen Elias as a glorified secretary for Eleanor's little hobbies. "Elias, good to see you," Arthur said dismissively. "Helping Eleanor with her little charity auction? Don't let her bid on any macaroni art." "Something like that, Mr. Vance," Elias said, his eyes flat and professional. He was carrying a velvet-lined security case. "Mrs. Hayes has a few items to review." Once Arthur was gone, claiming he had to set up the presentation, Elias opened the case. Inside, nestled on black velvet, was a staggering diamond and sapphire necklace, the legendary Celestial Azure by Vulgari. "The piece arrived from the vault, ma'am," Elias said. "Security detail is on standby. The car will be here at 7. We've confirmed the keynote speech is locked at 8 minutes, and the donation from Mr. Reed is confirmed." "Excellent," Eleanor said. She was not the shy volunteer. Her voice was pure command. "And the other matter?" "Guest list is confirmed," Elias said, checking his tablet. "Mr. Henderson and his wife are seated at table 3. Mr. Daniel Peterson is at table 9. "And Mr. Vance?" Elias paused. "Ma'am, he is, as you predicted, not on the list. Are you certain you wish to proceed?" "He will be," Eleanor said quietly. "He'll be arriving with a +1, a Ms. Chloe Jenkins. I've seen the credit card alert for the dress. See that they are allowed in, Elias. No fuss at the door. I don't just want them in. I want them welcomed. Reserve the high-top table. T12 for them. It's near the stage, but to the side. I want them to have a very clear view." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, that's surgical. Are you certain? The security protocol." "Elias," she said, her voice dropping, not in anger, but in absolute finality. "My husband has made his choices. Now I am making mine. See to it." "Yes, Mrs. Hayes," he said, snapping his tablet shut. The Vance was, for the first time, unspoken. Arthur, in his rented tuxedo, picked Chloe up in a black Uber XL. He'd wanted a limo, but the charge for the dress had pushed his credit card perilously close to its limit. "This is it, Artie," Chloe breathed, adjusting the slit on her dress. She looked electric, her makeup dramatic, her hair piled high. She was a neon sign in a world of gas lamps. "Our new life starts tonight." "Just let me do the talking, baby," Arthur said, his own heart thrumming with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. "Act like you've been here before." The Criterion Grand Ballroom was not just a room. It was a testament to Chicago's industrial age wealth. 30-foot ceilings dripped with crystal chandeliers, and the walls were adorned with murals of nymphs and heroes. A full orchestra was playing softly on a raised dais. The air itself seemed to glitter. Arthur, with Chloe clinging to his arm, felt a rush of adrenaline so potent it was almost dizzying. This was it. "Artie." "My God," Chloe whispered, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. The room was filled with men in bespoke tuxedos and women in gowns that cost more than Arthur's annual salary. He recognized titans of industry, political figures, even a famous actor. "Told you," Arthur whispered back, straightening his tie. "This is where the real deals are made." He approached the check-in desk, his stomach clenching. A polite young woman looked up. "Good evening, sir. May I have your name?" "Vance," Arthur said, trying to sound bored. "Arthur Vance. I'm here with James Henderson's group." The woman's fingers danced over her tablet. Arthur prepared his follow-up lie, his excuse. It never came. "Ah, yes. Mr. Vance," the woman said, her smile bright and welcoming. "We've been expecting you, and your guest, Ms. Chloe Jenkins." Arthur's shock must have been visible. You have?" "Of course, sir. Mrs. Hayes Vance left specific instructions for your arrival. We have a wonderful table reserved for you, T12. It's just by the stage. Please go right in." He was speechless. He took the embossed table card. Mrs. Hayes Vance? She'd used her married name? She must have known about his retreat and, in an act of pathetic, wifely devotion, called the venue to make sure he was taken care of. He'd almost have to thank her. He felt a surge of pure, unadulterated validation. His lie hadn't even been necessary. He was meant to be her. "What did I tell you?" he murmured to Chloe, who was practically vibrating with excitement. They grabbed champagne from a passing waiter. Chloe, in her daring emerald dress, was already drawing looks. Some were appreciative, but many, especially from the older women in pearls, were tinged with disdain. She was too loud, her dress too revealing for an event of this pedigree. Arthur didn't notice. He was scanning the room, high on the atmosphere. "There's Henderson!" he hissed, spotting his boss near the enormous, ice-sculpted centerpiece. "Let's go say hi. Act natural." They navigated the floor. Mr. Henderson, a portly man with a permanently stressed expression, was talking to a tall, silver-haired man. Arthur recognized him instantly. Marcus Reed, the billionaire founder of Reed Industries, a genuine titan and a notorious recluse. "Mr. Henderson, sir," Arthur said, clapping his boss on the back a little too hard. Henderson turned, his eyes widening in confusion. "Vance! What on earth are you doing here?" The bottom dropped out of Arthur's stomach. "Sir, the retreat." "What retreat?" Henderson looked baffled. "This is the Starlight Gala, Vance. My wife has volunteered for this foundation for a decade. This isn't a corporate event. How did you get in?" Before Arthur could stammer out a response, Marcus Reed, the billionaire, smiled warmly. "Don't be hard on the young man, James. The Starlight Foundation is known for its mysterious invitations. They always like to bring in new blood." He extended a hand to Arthur. "Marcus Reed. And you are?" "Arthur Vance, sir. And this is my colleague, Chloe Jenkins." "Colleague," Marcus Reed repeated, his eyes twinkling with an amusement Arthur couldn't decipher. "Vance, you say? From Henderson's firm? Interesting. I've been consulting with your firm recently, but your name never came up. You must be in a very specialized department. The over 70 crowd, perhaps." Arthur's face burned. Reed knew who he was. "Well," Reed continued, giving Chloe a polite, dismissive nod. "Enjoy the evening, Mr. Vance. The founder is a very dear friend of mine. She puts on a spectacular show. The auction items this year are breathtaking." Reed turned back to Henderson, dismissing them completely. Arthur, his face crimson, quickly steered Chloe away. "What the hell was that, Artie?" Chloe hissed, her grip tightening on his arm. "He didn't invite you? And that check-in woman, she said Mrs. Hayes Vance. What is going on?" "Shut up!" Arthur snapped. He must have forgotten, or his secretary did it. And Eleanor, she must have called ahead for my retreat, and they got the names mixed up. It's fine. Look, we're in, aren't we? That's all that matters. Now let's find our table. T12. He was rattled. He looked back at Marcus Reed, who was now laughing with Henderson. Reed looked up, caught Arthur's eye, and gave him a strange, almost pitying smile before raising his glass in a mock toast. Arthur quickly turned away. He chalked it up to luck. He found their table, a high top, just as promised. The view of the stage was perfect. "See?" he whispered to Chloe, stroking her back. "Best seats in the house. She set it all up for me." Chloe, placated by another glass of champagne, snuggled against him. "Just make sure you introduce me to that Reed guy again. He looks like he's actually worth my time." Arthur gritted his teeth and smiled. The lights began to dim, and a hush fell over the crowd of 500. The orchestra finished with a soft flourish, and the stage lights brightened. A distinguished-looking man stepped up to the podium. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen." His voice boomed, rich and warm. "Welcome to the 5th Annual Starlight Foundation Charity Ball. Tonight we celebrate a year of unprecedented success, funding pediatric wings and educational programs across the state. We have already, through your generosity tonight, raised over $20 million. A wave of polite, powerful applause. Chloe's jaw went slack. 20 million? Arthur felt a knot of sweat on his collar. This was bigger than he could have ever imagined. He was completely out of his depth, a minnow in an ocean of whales. His lie about a corporate retreat felt pathetic and small. "Tonight is special," the host continued, his voice softening. "Tonight we are here to build new hospitals, new futures, new foundations." Arthur felt a small, uneasy twitch. Foundations, the word his wife had used. "It is my distinct honor," the man boomed, "to introduce the heart and soul of this foundation, the woman whose vision, and more importantly, whose tireless work and personal generosity made all of this possible. She is a benefactor, a visionary, and a dear, dear friend. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and chairwoman of the Starlight Foundation." Arthur was barely listening. He was scanning the crowd, wondering if he could still salvage the night, maybe slip Henderson his business card. Chloe was fixated on the stage, her eyes gleaming with avarice. This was the world she wanted. A woman who has tirelessly and quietly built an empire of hope. Please give a warm, thunderous welcome to Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, Vance. The name hit Arthur Vance like a physical blow. It was not possible. It was a mistake. A different Eleanor Vance. It had to be. A coincidence. His mind scrambled, trying to find purchase on a reality that was suddenly shifting like sand. He turned his head, a sickening, jerky motion, from the crowd to the stage. The orchestra swelled. The spotlight flared, blinding him. And into that circle of brilliant white light walked his wife. She was not the woman he'd left at home. This was not the simple Eleanor in her maternity overalls, discussing robin's egg blue. This woman was a queen. She wore a custom-made gown of midnight blue velvet, designed to drape elegantly over her 7-month pregnancy. Her hair, which she usually wore in a simple bun, was swept up in a sophisticated chignon, and around her neck. Arthur's vision tunneled. It was the celestial azure, the necklace he had seen in a magazine once, in an article about the world's most priceless gems. It was a necklace with a name. She wasn't just beautiful. She was magnificent. She radiated a power and a confidence he had never seen. She walked to the podium, and the room, filled with billionaires, senators, and socialites, rose to their feet in a deafening standing ovation. Arthur's champagne glass slipped from his numb fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The sound was lost in the applause. "Artie?" Chloe whispered, her voice sharp with confusion. "Artie, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." He couldn't speak. He couldn't breathe. His entire world had just tilted on its axis and thrown him into a lightless void. Chloe looked from his ashen face to the woman on stage, who was now smiling, her hand resting on her pregnant belly as she waited for the applause to die down. Chloe's eyes narrowed. She saw the hair, the profile, the pregnancy. "Wait," Chloe said, her voice dropping to a dangerous hiss. The little non-profit dinner? The Lakeview room?" She looked back at Arthur, her painted red lips pulling back into a snarl. "That's her, isn't it?" she breathed, her fantasy crumbling. "That's your wife." Eleanor tapped the microphone, a small, knowing smile on her face. The crowd settled instantly. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was not the soft, gentle murmur he heard at home. It was clear, strong, and carried to every corner of the massive ballroom. It was a voice accustomed to being obeyed. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Eleanor began. "For 5 years, the Starlight Foundation has operated on a simple principle, that the most valuable assets we have are not the ones we keep, but the ones we give away. It's about building a legacy, a foundation." Arthur was paralyzed. Every head in the room was on his wife. He saw his boss, James Henderson, watching her with open admiration. He saw Marcus Reed, the billionaire, looking at her with an expression of deep, personal affection. "This year is, of course, very special to me," Eleanor continued, and her hand moved to her stomach. "I'm preparing to build a new foundation. A human one." The crowd chuckled warmly. "It has made me think deeply about the world we are building for our children, and I've come to realize that a foundation, whether for a building, a charity, or a family, cannot survive if it is built on a compromised framework. It cannot survive with a rotted core." Chloe grabbed Arthur's arm, her nails digging into his skin. "What is she talking about?" I don't know," Arthur lied, but he knew. He knew. "A few years ago," Eleanor said, her voice becoming intimate, "I decided to build a new house, a new life. I had the blueprints. I had the land. I wanted it to be a partnership. So I found a builder. This builder, he looked the part. He had a shiny truck and a confident smile. He talked a good game. He talked about leveraged assets and market trends, when all I needed was for him to be good and true." The room was silent, captivated by her metaphor. Arthur felt the blood drain from his face. "So I gave him the keys," Eleanor continued. "I trusted him with the budget. I trusted him with the foundation. And for a while the facade looked beautiful. The paint was fresh, the lawn was green. But I started to notice discrepancies, small things at first. Bills for materials that never arrived. Hours billed for work that was never done. And a terrible, hollow sound when I knocked on the walls." Her eyes, brilliant under the lights, began to scan the crowd. Arthur felt an animal instinct to hide, to shrink. He was in a spotlight of his own, a dark, negative space of his own making. Then her eyes found him. Across the vast, opulent room, through the glittering assembly, her gaze locked directly onto his. It was not the warm, forgiving look of his wife. It was the cold, appraising stare of a CEO identifying a bad investment. She held his gaze for 1, 2, 3 agonizing seconds. She saw him. She saw the shattered glass at his feet, and she saw Chloe, clinging to his arm in her $4,800 emerald green dress. Without flinching, Eleanor smiled. It was the most terrifying smile Arthur had ever seen. She then looked away, dismissing him, and addressed the crowd at large. "So, what do you do when you discover the rot is in the very foundation? Do you cover it up with new paint? Do you hope it goes away? No. You tear it down. You tear it all down, to the studs, and you expose the rot to the light. You get rid of the compromised materials. You file for the right permits, and you start again, this time with integrity." A shiver went through the room. This was more than a standard charity speech. This had teeth. "The Starlight Foundation will not collapse," she declared, her voice ringing with power. "Because it is built on truth. It is built by all of you. By your truth. By your generosity. And tonight I am overwhelmed. I want to personally thank my dear friend and mentor, Marcus Reed, for his staggering $10 million matching donation for the new Eleanor Hayes pediatric wing." The room erupted. Marcus Reed stood up and blew her a small kiss. Chloe finally let go of Arthur's arm. Her entire body was trembling with rage. But it wasn't the rage of a woman scorned. It was the rage of a grifter who'd been played. "You," she whispered, her voice venomous. "You told me she was nobody. You told me you were the successful one. You brought me here to her party in a dress she paid for." She gestured to the credit card receipt he'd so foolishly left on his desk. She'd seen it. "You're not a big shot. You're just her husband." The last word was spat like a curse. Arthur couldn't respond. He just stared at the stage as his wife, his Eleanor, concluded her speech. "Thank you," she finished. "Enjoy your evening. And please bid generously. Our children are counting on it." Another standing ovation. As Eleanor walked off the stage, she was immediately enveloped by Marcus Reed, who kissed her on both cheeks, and by James Henderson, Arthur's boss, who was bowing like a courtier. The music swelled. The gala was continuing. But for Arthur Vance, the world had ended. The social annihilation was immediate and absolute. It was as if a silent alarm had been tripped. The people at the surrounding tables, who had previously ignored them, now cast sidelong glances, their expressions a mixture of pity and utter contempt. They had seen it all: the shattered glass, Arthur's ashen face, Chloe's theatrical fury, and, most importantly, Eleanor's cold, precise stare from the stage. "Get me out of here," Chloe hissed, shoving Arthur toward the exit. "Wait, Chloe, I can explain." "Explain what? Explain that you're a pathetic liar? That your simple little wife is the richest woman in the room? You didn't bring me here to show me off, Arthur. You brought me here to be humiliated." "I didn't know," he cried, his voice cracking, a desperate half-truth. "I swear I had no idea. She told me she was a volunteer." As they stumbled toward the grand exit, their path was suddenly blocked. It wasn't the hotel security. It was Elias Thorne, Eleanor's assistant, flanked by two imposing men in dark suits. "Mr. Vance," Elias said, his voice polite but unyielding. "Ms. Jenkins, there appears to be a problem with your invitation." "What?" "No, we were on the list," Arthur protested weakly. "At T12, your woman said—" "Ah, yes, table 12, Elias said with a thin smile. "The termination table, we call it. A special reservation. I'm afraid your presence is no longer required. The corporate retreat has been cancelled. Permanently." "Please," Arthur begged, his mind racing. He had to fix this. "Elias, listen. This is a misunderstanding. She's my cousin, from out of town. She's Sophia. I brought her to meet Eleanor as a surprise." Chloe, who had been furious, now looked at him with a new, deeper level of disgust. Elias Thorne actually laughed, a single sharp, "Ha. Your cousin? Sophia? That's disappointing, Arthur. I expected a better lie, given your recent track record." He gestured. The two guards stepped forward, each taking an arm. "No, wait! You can't do this!" Arthur yelled. "Ms. Jenkins," Elias said, ignoring him. "A word of advice. I'd have a very good lawyer look at the bill for that dress. Mrs. Hayes has a rather aggressive legal team when it comes to fraudulent use of her accounts." Chloe went pale. The fight drained out of her, replaced by pure, cold panic. It was a nightmare. They weren't just leaving. They were being removed. The guards flanked them, guiding them firmly through the sea of whispering socialites. Arthur saw his boss, Henderson, look over. Henderson saw the guards, saw Arthur's face, and just shook his head in disgust before pointedly turning his back. It was over. His career, his reputation, evaporated. They were marched through the gilded lobby, past the check-in desk, and pushed unceremoniously through the main doors into the cold November night. The rain had started, a miserable, freezing drizzle. Chloe, her emerald dress already darkening with rain, her hair ruined, turned on him. "Chloe, please," Arthur begged, reaching for her. I can fix this. I'll file for divorce. I'll get half of her money. We can—" Slap. The sound echoed on the wet pavement. Chloe struck him so hard, his head snapped to the side, his cheek stinging from the impact and the cold. "Half her money?" she shrieked, the last shred of her glamour dissolving. "You think a woman like that, a woman who built that," she gestured back at the fortress-like hotel, "who just gave a speech about tearing down rot, doesn't have an ironclad prenuptial agreement. You're not just a liar, Arthur. You're a fool. You had a queen, and you threw her away for me." She was right. He knew, in that sickening moment, that she was absolutely right. Eleanor, the quiet, methodical planner, would never have left a single thread loose. "Don't you ever," Chloe snarled, jabbing a finger in his chest, "ever speak to me again. You've ruined me. You've ruined yourself." She turned, kicked off her ridiculously expensive, and now he realized, unpaid for, heels, and stormed barefoot down the street, hailing a taxi with a desperate, shaky hand. Arthur Vance stood alone on the curb, his rented tuxedo soaked. He checked his pocket for his phone. He had to call Eleanor. He had to apologize. He had to— What? He pulled it out, his hands trembling. He had 34 missed texts from work colleagues, and a new email from Elias, thornyhayesfoundation.org, subject, Notice of Intent and Termination of Residency. Sent 7:15 p.m. Arthur, by the time you read this, the locks on the apartment at Lakeshore Drive will have been changed. Your personal effects are being couriered to your office at Henderson and Locke. A petition for divorce on the grounds of adultery has been filed. You will be served by Monday morning. All joint credit cards, including the one you used at Boutique Name for the sum of $4,800, have been cancelled. That debt is now yours alone. Furthermore, a forensic accounting of the joint accounts has been initiated. Any funds determined to have been used for extramarital purposes, 37,450, so 12 over 6 months, will be clawed back in the divorce settlement. Do not attempt to contact Mrs. Hayes Vance. All future communication will be through her legal counsel. We wish you well in your future endeavors. Arthur's knees buckled. He leaned against a stone pillar, the rain plastering his hair to his face. He looked at the timestamp, 7:15 p.m. Before he had even arrived, she knew, she had known all along, the entire night, the welcoming check-in, the special table, the speech, the humiliation, the guards. It wasn't a discovery. It was a judgment. It was an execution. He tried to go home. He took a taxi to their luxury apartment building. As he walked toward the door, the night doorman, Frank, a man who had accepted his Christmas tips for 3 years, stepped in front of him. "I'm sorry, Mr. Vance," Frank said, his face impassive. "I have strict instructions. You are not to enter. Mrs. Hayes's legal team was here this evening. You are no longer a resident." "Frank, come on. It's me," Arthur pleaded. "My instructions are absolute, sir. A car is waiting to take you to a hotel for the night. It has been prepaid." It was the final, crushing humiliation. He wasn't just divorced. He was handled. The days that followed were a systematic dismantling of the life Arthur Vance thought he had. He arrived at his office on Monday at 9 a.m., haggard and wearing a rumpled suit he'd bought at a 24-hour department store. His personal effects, a single cardboard box with a desk plant, a few framed photos of him and Eleanor, which he quickly turned face down, and his replica, watch, were waiting for him on his chair. His computer was dark. His access key was deactivated. By 9:05 a.m., Henderson's secretary, a woman who had always been kind to him, looked at him with cold pity. "Mr. Henderson will see you, in the main boardroom." The boardroom? He walked in. It wasn't just Henderson. 2 senior partners, Mr. Locke and Ms. Albright, were there. And a 4th man in a sharkskin suit he didn't recognize. "Vance," Henderson said, not bothering to sit down. "Pack your desk. You're finished." "Sir, please, it was a misunderstanding. My wife and I." "Your wife?" Ms. Albright, the firm's legal counsel, cut him off. Her voice was like ice. "You mean Eleanor Hayes, the woman who founded Hayes Tech, the woman who, at 28, sold her patent portfolio to a tech conglomerate for a sum I am legally not allowed to say, but which has 9 zeros in it. That wife?" Arthur was speechless. He'd thought her inheritance was a few $100,000. "You idiot!" Henderson roared, his face purple. "The Starlight Foundation isn't just a charity. It's her personal endowment. The Hayes Foundation is one of our firm's single largest institutional clients. She gave us the business as a favor when she married you, to give you some, I don't know, dignity. And how do you repay her?" "You didn't just cheat on your wife, Arthur," Locke, the numbers man, said quietly, looking at a spreadsheet. "You jeopardized this entire company. Marcus Reed is a personal friend of hers. He was considering moving his $500 million family fund to us. Was. After Friday's performance, he has decided to, and I quote, seek management from adults." The man in the sharkskin suit stepped forward and placed a thick folder on the table. "Mr. Vance, I am from the firm's external counsel. We are terminating your employment for cause, based on a gross violation of the company's morals clause, and for actions constituting a severe conflict of interest that has resulted in material damages to the firm." "Material damages?" "The loss of the Reed account," Henderson snapped. "Get out. If you try to fight this, we will publicly release the reason for your termination. I don't think any other firm in this city will hire you when they know you defrauded Eleanor Hayes." Arthur, carrying his small cardboard box, was walked out of the building. He spent the next weeks in a haze, living in a soul-crushing extended-stay hotel. The legal papers arrived, served by a terrifyingly expensive lawyer. The prenuptial agreement he'd signed, the one he'd assumed was a formality, was a fortress. He was entitled to nothing. Not only that, but the debt he had accumulated trying to impress Chloe, the dress, the dinners, the secret trips, was now solely his. He was ruined. He saw Chloe one last time. She was on a local tabloid news segment, trying to sell her tell-all story. She looked cheap and desperate under the harsh studio lights. "He lied to me," she was saying. "He tricked me. I'm a victim here, just as much as Eleanor is." The host cut her off. "Right. But let's be honest, Miss Jenkins. You knew he was a married man. The real story here is Eleanor Hayes, a true class act." No one cared about Chloe. No one cared about Arthur. They were footnotes in the triumph of Eleanor Hayes. 1 year later, the name Arthur Vance was effectively a ghost. The man himself was almost unrecognizable. He lived in a grey 4th-floor studio apartment in a sprawling complex near the interstate, a place that smelled of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. The constant, dull roar of traffic was his only companion. The man who had once discussed macroeconomic trends now worked in a vast, fluorescent-lit cubicle farm in a suburban office park for a company called Apex Medical Solutions. His job, procured after 6 humiliating months of unemployment, was to cold call dental offices and try to sell them bulk orders of disposable bibs and latex gloves. He was, by every conceivable metric, a failure. The sharp suits were gone, replaced by ill-fitting, sweat-stained polyester. He had gained 40 pounds, a soft, pale armor of self-loathing. He sat at his desk, his headset pinching his ears, a plastic cup of lukewarm water sweating onto his desk. It was 12:30 p.m., his mandatory 30-minute lunch break. He was eating a crushed protein bar from a vending machine, to escape the din of 100 other voices on the sales floor. Yes, Dr. Miller, but our value per unit is unmatched. He put in his earbuds and idly scrolled through the Chicago Business News. That's when he saw it. The headline was, "Chicago's Quiet Titan. Eleanor Hayes' 100-MIT division opens today." His heart, which he'd assumed had atrophied, gave a painful, violent lurch. He clicked the link. A professionally produced video began to play. There was Eleanor. She was standing on a sun-drenched plaza in front of a breathtaking structure of glass and white stone. She wasn't just sleek, she was a force of nature. She wore a royal blue dress that was both professional and impossibly chic. Her hair was cut in a sharp, modern bob. She was flanked by the mayor, a U.S. senator, and Marcus Reed. They weren't just standing with her, they were orbiting her. She was the sun. "Mrs. Hayes Vance," a reporter began. "Just Hayes," Eleanor corrected, her voice clear and resonant, amplified by the microphones. "I've reclaimed my name." The reporter didn't miss a beat. "Ms. Hayes, the Eleanor Hayes Wing for Pediatric Innovation is being called a marvel. What does this day mean to you?" Eleanor smiled, a genuine, brilliant smile that Arthur had never, not once, received. "It means," she said, "that we've stopped accepting good enough. It means that the children of this city will have a foundation of care built on integrity, transparency, and the absolute best technology we can create." Arthur's protein bar turned to ash in his mouth. Integrity. Foundation. Her words from the Gala. It hadn't just been a speech to humiliate him, it was a genuine, unshakable mission statement. "And as a new mother yourself," the reporter continued, "this must feel incredibly personal." "It is," Eleanor said. A moment later, an assistant, the sharp, ever-present Elias Thorne, stepped forward, handing her a beautiful, bright-eyed baby boy. The child, perhaps 10 months old, was dressed in a tiny, smart outfit. He had her eyes. "This," Eleanor said, her voice softening for the first time as she kissed the baby's head, "is my son, Theodore Hayes." The reporter, fishing, asked, "No middle name? No father's name?" Eleanor's smile was polite, but edged with steel. "My son carries my name, the name that built this." The camera panned to the side of the building, where, carved into the granite facade in letters 3 feet high, it read, "The Eleanor Hayes Wing." Arthur made a sound, a choked, wet gasp. The man in the next cubicle, a senior sales rep named Gary, glanced over in annoyance. "You okay there, Artie?" Gary muttered, not looking away from his screen. Arthur couldn't answer. He was watching his entire life pivot on the axis of this one catastrophic miscalculation. He flashed back to Eleanor, 7 months pregnant, sitting on their floor, patiently trying to assemble a baby stroller. He remembered her asking about Robin's egg blue. He remembered his snap of irritation, his bored dismissal, his urgent need to get back to texting Chloe. He hadn't just cheated on a nice woman. He had betrayed a titan. He hadn't just lied to his wife. He had lied to the single most important person he had ever, or would ever, meet. He, Arthur Vance, a man who prided himself on reading the market, had failed to see the 9-0 fortune, the steel trap mind, and the world-changing ambition sitting right across his own dinner table. all because she wasn't loud like Chloe. He thought he was the one with ambition. His ambition had been to rent a tuxedo and sneak into a party. Her ambition was to build hospitals. The video ended. Arthur sat, paralyzed, as the sales floor sounds rushed back in, the phones, the typing, the desperate, fake cheerful voices. He was a leech who had been discovered, and calmly, methodically, and painlessly scraped away. He wasn't even a villain in her story. He was a footnote, a bad line item that had been audited, corrected, and deleted. "Vance!" a voice roared. It was his manager, a man half his age. "Your break was over 2 minutes ago. Are you building a sandcastle or are you selling bibs? Get back on the phones. Now!" Arthur fumbled for his headset, his hands shaking, his face burning with a shame so profound it was suffocating. "Yes, sir," he whispered. That evening, in a penthouse apartment that overlooked the city and her new hospital, Eleanor Hayes finished a video call. Marcus Reed's face smiled from the large screen on her study wall. "The board is ecstatic, Elle," Marcus said. "The senator is already fast-tracking the zoning for the research center. You've done it again." "We've done it, Marcus," she corrected, rocking Theodore in her arms. "And the other matter? The Henderson and Locke settlement?" "Finalized this morning," Marcus reported. "Their firm paid a $2.5 million penalty to the foundation for the, let's call it, the conflict of interest. They were lucky we didn't dismantle them completely. You were merciful." Eleanor looked down at her son, who was drifting to sleep. "Mercy is for people who make a mistake, Marcus. What happened was a systemic failure. This was just a market correction, a necessary one." Her voice was calm, devoid of anger or bitterness. It was the voice of a CEO closing a file. "So, partner," Marcus said, his voice warm. "What's next? You've built the wing. You've secured the research center. The world, I presume." Eleanor smiled, looking out the floor-to-ceiling window at the city lights, at the bright, new beacon of her hospital wing, glittering in the distance. She kissed her son's head. "We're not taking the world, Marcus," she said. "We're building a new one." And that's the story of how one man's deceitful climb to the top led him to rock bottom, all at the hands of the woman he so grossly underestimated. It's a powerful reminder that true strength often lies in quiet integrity, and that lies, no matter how well constructed, will always crumble in the face of the truth. What did you think of Arthur's shocking downfall? Have you ever seen someone underestimate a person, only to be completely stunned by who they truly were? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories about justice and shocking reveals, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to see it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss a single one of our real-life dramas. We have new stories coming every week, and you won't want to miss what's next.